Healthy Scratch Red Wings Report, presented by 5v5hockey.com.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Healthy Scratch Red Wings Report. It's Buschy with you once again. It's the second time I've talked to you today. The trade deadline is done, okay? And I know that there's like some really polarizing fans out there. I'm here to help everybody understand what's going on, okay? So today, the Red Wings made one trade, okay? We talked about Klim Kostin getting traded, and they didn't really bring in much. I mean, depth defenseman for AHL and a 7th round pick. This trade was more about, like I said, getting rid of Kostin's $2 million cap hit. I know a lot of people want the Red Wings to go for a big swing, right? You see all these other teams making these crazy deals, like Thomas Hertl going to the Vegas Golden Knights, and Hanifin going there as well, and Colorado's loading up, and Dallas, and Florida's getting Tarasenko, and all of these teams are grabbing all of these players. But something that they all have in common is they're all Stanley Cup contenders. I felt okay with the Red Wings not doing much. I thought maybe they'd do something in our trade deadline preview. I was talking about a lot of players, and ultimately none of them are Detroit Red Wings today. But I'm not mad about it. I know a lot of people will be like, oh my God, you're such an Yzerman slappy. It's like, listen, it's all logical, okay? And like even looking at this before I listened to Steve Yzerman's press conference, I kind of was thinking like at maybe the last 3 hours of the deadline, a lot of the bigger players had moved. And looking at the lists that me and Bobo had come up with, and even looking at TSNs and SportsCenter and all these, or Sportsnet, there was a lot of players on there that I'm not really sure if I care about getting Matt Dumba, because like you're looking at names, right? And for as much as like Matt Dumba went for a 5th round pick, like we don't need defensemen right now. We have too many. That's the problem. At the prices that they were giving up, I don't think there was any way that they were going to move Justin Holl without giving up an asset as well. They're going 11-7 tonight in Arizona, so Holl will be in the lineup. So I'm hoping he does well for not playing for so long. But they did offload that Klim Kostin contract. They saved $2 million, not specifically for this year because who cares, but next year. And that's something where we're going to go through some of the things that Steve Yzerman was talking about today, because I think it sheds a lot of light on what his thinking was and how calculated he is and how far in advance they are thinking. So the number one thing that Yzerman was talking about today in his press conference, and it came up a lot, was how much he likes the depth in Grand Rapids. He loves Jonathan Berggren. He loves Simon Edvinsson. He talked about these guys like at length, and he was asked multiple times about how these guys have been playing in the minors. And my thought too was, I would rather have these guys coming up than some rental player that maybe isn't as good as them. I mean, we've seen Berggren in the NHL already. He had 15 goals last year. He has proven, even in the NHL, that he is a player that can be in the NHL, should be in the NHL. And same thing with Simon Edvinsson. Obviously, way smaller sample size, but he's played so well in Grand Rapids that at one point, we're going to see him in Detroit, and I don't think he's ever going back down. Something that I didn't realize, and probably not a lot of people realize either, is if Jonathan Berggren comes up this year, if he plays 4 games with the Red Wings, he is going to have to clear waivers to go back to Grand Rapids. So effectively, if he comes up, he's staying up. A question that Yzerman was asked today was, are you like aware of that 4 games, and is that a reason that you would maybe keep him in Grand Rapids for their playoff run? And he very bluntly said no. If there's something we can do to make this Red Wings roster better and make the playoffs, we're going to do it. And if that means calling up Jonathan Berggren and he's here, it's because he's earned it, and that's because he's going to help us win. Same thing with Edvinsson. So I think that that's probably the right thinking, because we've all, I think, wanted Jonathan Berggren to come up because we know what he can do, and he's a skilled player, and we want there to be room for him. Now, I'm hoping he's the guy that gets called up because he really has earned it. I know Grand Rapids is on a tear right now, but they've got a lot of skill down there, so they'll be okay. And ultimately, these depth players that I was talking about that were maybe on the market, Yzerman didn't want to give up draft picks for them. He doesn't want to give up a 1, a 2, a 3. And when I say rentals, I'm talking a guy like Jake Gensel. There's no extension in place where he might just go to free agency. There's no guarantees. There's not a lot of sign and trades ever really that happen in the NHL. Sometimes you can agree to a trade and have an extension in place all at the same time if they allow you to talk with the player, which sometimes will facilitate a trade. In some of these instances, it just didn't make sense. And Yzerman did say he knew about a month ago the direction that the Red Wings team was going, what it was going to cost for some of these players, and that they just weren't okay with giving up what the cost for some of those players were or where they would fit in the lineup. With Klim Kostin moving, it was definitely a cap space issue for next season, but he also said that Klim Kostin and his agent came up and said, hey, he's not playing that much. He's a young player. He's trying to get his footing in the NHL. Can he get, a different change of scenery? And obviously Yzerman's going to go, you know what? It makes sense for us. It makes sense for you. Let's get rid of you. They didn't really get anything but that $2 million salary cap relief. He said it did not make sense to have a $2 million player not playing in the lineup, not even just this year, but next year as well. And another thing he stressed is that he really likes the locker room. He says, like, from as close as he can get to the locker room, which is probably Derek Lalonde, he likes the mix that they have in there. He likes the energy and everything's positive. People like being here. I don't think you want to mess with that. He did mention Larkin being out and how, hey, our depth is going to have to step up, and he believes in that room and he believes in those players. And he's definitely someone that's going to balance now versus the future. He's always said he wants to build a perennial playoff team, playoff contender, really. You don't want to have a one and done and then that's it. And sometimes being hyper aggressive isn't the way to go. And this year, it just wasn't the way to go. And I would rather keep these draft picks and prospects for a year where, hey, we're in kind of the driver's seat, almost like a Vegas or a Colorado, or like where we're at the top of the division, or we're in that chase where we have the arms race. And it's like, we need to keep up with these other teams. That's when you can get a little bit aggressive and move some of the picks and prospects that you have. This year as a wild card team, I think we've already seen playing Colorado. Yzerman said, McKinnon and Makar, how the hell are you supposed to stop them? You're going to have play really good team defense. Didn't happen. They were superhuman the other night. Florida Panthers, they played unbelievable, and they're a top team in the league, and they're going to buy, and they brought in Tarasenko. So that's the difference between like having a gut decision, like when people are like, oh, Larkin's out, they're going to change their whole outlook. That's just not how it's going, and that's exactly what happened. They didn't change what they were going to do. He also said that, he was really pleased with Patrick Kane and how he's been playing. He said at the very worst, he thought he would help the power play, but, at the very best is what's happening right now. And that you could technically look at that as a trade deadline acquisition, about a month ago. 2 months ago, really. And another interesting thing that he did say is with some of these depth players that they were looking for, and Derek Lalonde has said he wanted a depth piece maybe up front, is obviously the price maybe a little too high for those specific players. But Yzerman likes his players in Grand Rapids more than the players that he would have traded for. I agree with that. Looking at some of the players on the list that we came up with that was, maybe towards the bottom that would be cheaper. Yeah, would I rather have Jonathan Berggren in the lineup? 100%. Would I rather have Simon Edvinsson over Marco Scandella? Yeah, 100%. So there's just players that didn't make sense to me, and obviously didn't make sense to Yzerman and the Red Wings. So I know that there's going to be some people that are disappointed because there wasn't really a big move. Maybe we're looking for like a Jacob Chikrin, like something where it's going to, hey, we're going to get a guy for next season as well. There wasn't a lot of guys that were traded that had term left on their deal. There obviously were a few. There always are a few of those. But there wasn't like a need for these teams to move guys. Like Jacob Chikrin, David Savard, those type of players that have another year left on their contract. The teams that own their contracts don't have to move them. There's really no rush. If they're unrestricted, yeah, you might want to make a deal and make a move. Those players can be dealt at the draft. And like there's still things that the Red Wings are going to do into the offseason. Now, looking forward, yeah, playoffs or bust. Like that's kind of how I'm looking at this, and I've said that in my previous video. We're in a playoff spot right now. That's the reality. At the beginning of the year, a wild card spot was kind of maybe the goal. I said to be in the conversation in March and April. And they've exceeded my expectations, and I think they've exceeded their own expectations. But now that you're in this spot, you have to keep it. You have to make the playoffs. It'll be incredibly disappointing if they don't make it. And I've said going forward, the Flyers have a gauntlet that they have to run through. The Islanders are coming on a little bit here. We do play them once before the end of the year. We have to play Arizona tonight. We have to get these wins because this is a team that's at the bottom. They're not that good. We're playing them twice. We play the Sabres twice. We're playing Pittsburgh, who's selling. We also play Golden Knights, which hopefully we can play against them. Once in a while, the Wings do play up and play really well against these good teams, like the first game they played Colorado. So for everyone that's panicking and saying Yzerman isn't doing the right thing, and it's just, you have to be a realist sometimes. And I know that makes me sound like an Yzerman slappy, and I am. I love the guy. But when everything just makes sense, or maybe it doesn't make sense in terms of going to get a guy, you just have to go with the flow. And I don't think any of those players that were really out there at the end of the deadline were going to really move the needle that much. If they would have went out and got like a Tyler Toffoli or a Jake Gensel or a Hanifin, obviously, like those big players, if you want to look at some of those deals and go, hey, I would have done that, that's fair. Obviously, Yzerman didn't want to do that. They value their draft picks. They value their prospects. They're trying to build it the right way, and they're going to continue to add to this team going forward into the offseason. So going forward, we need to see a playoff game. If they're in the playoffs, I'm going to both home games. That's just how it's going to be. I mean, it's been so long since I've been to a playoff game. Never been one at LCA. So I think if they can get through this stretch where they don't have Dylan Larkin and they can string together 3 or 4 wins in those 7, I think they'll be completely fine because you got 20 games left. You just got to stay afloat. You have to stay ahead of these teams. Every team is going to go on a couple streaks here and there. Tonight, the streak ends. We need to get the W, get the 2 points. You're 2 games up on Tampa Bay with the same amount of points. You're a couple of points up on the Islanders. I think the Flyers are probably going to fall out, is my hope. And hopefully we keep Washington at bay as well. So what do you guys think of the deadline? I know they only made the 1 move. Do you understand some of the moves that they didn't make? You know, do they understand the Costin move? Is there anything that you wish they would have done? Like, is there any trades or players out there that you would have gone, hey, I would have made that trade. I did it a couple times today where I went, wow, that's all? If they value their prospects and their players more than the ones they would have acquired, I'm all for it. Hey guys, if you enjoyed that video, please like, comment, and subscribe for more Red Wings hockey. I'll see you in the next one.